Hello and welcome to Banned Book Summer with First Geek 411. So stoked to be talking about the Freedom Writer's Diary today. Before we hop into that, remember you can find us at all the social medias, First Geek 411 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Join our Discord server or shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on our Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time and find all our videos over on YouTube. And you can also check out some sweet, sweet merch at our Redbubble store. I'm Shanine, and with me I have Emma.
Hi.
And Cameron.
Hello, hello.
All right, so we are talking about the. Can never get it.
I believe.
Come on. No.
There we go. There we go.
Aha! The Freedom Writer's Diary by The Freedom Writers with Erin Gruwell. This nonfiction book is like a group memoir of a classroom of students labeled unteachable and their dauntless teacher. Room 203 in Wilson High School in Long Beach, California. I forgot to write down the year, but I want to say
This was like
1994.
1990s. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds right.
Where the difficult
94.
and nice. Thank you. So, yes, in room 203, where the difficult and hopeless students were sent, was kind of a microcosm of the racial tension and violence in their city and country. First year English teacher Miss Gruwell was determined to get through to her students. She developed a curriculum for her students centered around tolerance and stories that they could connect to, and strove to bring the lessons they were learning to life. Inspired by the diaries of Anne Frank and Zlata Filipovic and the activism of the Freedom Riders, the students of Room 203 assembled their own diary describing their struggles, sharing their lessons, and dreaming of hope for the future together. And I really like their dedication, um, which says, "To our incredible teacher, Miss Gruwell, who taught us to believe in ourselves, to Anne Frank, who inspired us to write, to Zlata, our friend, who passed us the torch, to the Freedom Riders who paved the way, and to kids everywhere whose lives were lost to senseless violence, but whose spirits live on." All right. So, to begin with, what is your 3-word review?
Great deep dive.
Really cool idea.
Um, Powerful, meaningful, and real. Right. Were you aware of the Freedom Riders before this?
I had heard of it, but I couldn't recall it off the top of my head. And then Shanine, you sent that list of banned books, and it stood out to me because I was like, oh, I think I've heard of that before. So, like, I've heard of it, but it wasn't ever, like, majorly on my radar. So, yes, but no.
Yeah, kind of the same for me. Like, I feel like I could not have told you that this was the Freedom Riders, but like after like looking at the list, seeing that, I'm like, oh, okay, this does seem like something I remembered hearing about in passing before, but it wasn't something that I could really have told you much, if anything, about.
Yes, I had actually seen the movie with Hilary Swank um, way back when I was a teenager. Um, and it was actually very, very good. And it was so nice reading in the book that they did actually like work closely with the development of it so that it did represent their story well. So I love that. Um, but yeah, so I have been aware of them for quite a while, and I'm really excited to finally have actually read their diary. Um,
Yeah.
Okay. So we will get more to it being a banned book later. So, not discussing specifics right now, but knowing that it is a banned book, did you approach reading it differently at all?
For me, I not really. Just like I mostly just went into it being more intentional about reading it, I guess, of like I'm a big fan of reading banned books specifically. Um, as a way to say, hey, there's probably a ulterior motive for the people who want this book banned. Let's like be aware of what that is and how it may or may not go against the story and message that the book is telling. So like I'm always in general, if I'm gonna read a banned book, just more intentional about like actually paying attention as I read it. Um, so that was about that. I find it fun to read banned books. So
Yeah, I think for me, I read with the, oh, how far till we get to why this book is banned?
yeah.
Like, I definitely read with that mindset of like, kind of going off of what Emma said earlier in the year for a different book club. We also did a banned books, and I read Mouse, which is like about the
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust. And it's like, oh, how far into this book about the Holocaust can we get before? Oh, yeah, not very far. And so I feel like that kind of adds that mindset to it of like, or even like reading through it and being like, hey, what are the objections that people are going to be raising as you go through this book? I think it kind of like um, almost like makes it a different genre because the genre becomes why is this banned
Yep.
versus just being like taking everything just as it is.
I definitely agree with both of you. I specifically did not want to know what it was banned for going in, but I wanted to see if I could spot it. And so it was kind of like a, ooh, find the objectionable content.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also, like Emma was saying, like reading it mindfully and being like, is the objectionable content what it's really being objected to?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Most of the time they like to try to convince you that it's for a good reason and it's not. So, you know,
Yeah, no.
99% of the time it's for not good reasons.
mhm. I'm very excited to go on a banned book rant later. Um,
Yes.
uh, start out with some more fun questions. Um, the Freedom Writers obviously shared a lot of stories of the things that they did together, different learning activities, activism things that they did together, just general antics that they got up to as a classroom. Was there any standout moments of Freedom Writer lore for you?
Yes. It, I thought it was fun and cute and like a great teaching device for her to motivate these kids with things like if you all do really well on this assignment, I'm going to take you to a Ren Fair dinner because our unit is on William Shakespeare. Um and then all of these kids who grew up in the hood were like, we've never been to a nice dinner before. Let's all do really well. And then they invested themselves in this unit, discovered they
Mm-hmm.
really liked what they were learning, and then they ended up going to a Ren Fair dinner and like getting to experience what they just learned. Um, of course, there's other stuff tacked onto that. But like just like doing little things like that where she as the teacher really tried to apply things to a real world setting for these kids in ways that other classrooms weren't doing that for them. So it was things like going to those fun, fancy period dinners and going to the movies and going to Washington, D.C. to really like expand on their world. And I thought that was cool. And like, I was just picturing a bunch of, you know, Latino and Asian kids who had never been outside of their neighborhoods before, specifically just in this like Ren Fair dinner setting of like being so in awe of something that they would have never experienced otherwise, and then getting to apply that to their school. So,
For me, I liked the basketball game. I think that's a fun one of getting to hear their team names, and like the team names are never listed, but you just kind of pick them up over the next couple diary entries. And so I thought that was really fun. And then the stuff around Zlata's visit I thought was really cool. And so getting to like have the actual payoff for, hey, we're very much inspired by this thing that is happening to someone that's a peer of theirs, and like being able to then have that person come and have their family come and get to speak to the students, I thought was super cool.
Um, my favorite moment was when they had started working together to assemble the diary, and they were at school working late, and they were there so late that all the alarms had been set so that I believe the janitor told them they had to climb out the window because they weren't allowed to leave through the door at that point anymore.
yep.
Um, and then they ended up still getting caught by the cops and had to like convince them that they were with their teacher. And like she was so young that she didn't look like their teacher and was like dressed in comfy clothes and stuff. So they were like,
We don't believe it.
like what a core memory that would be to get
Mm-hmm.
stopped by the cops climbing out of your classroom window with your teacher just because you're working on schoolwork together.
Yeah, the
I'm
most
sure.
benign
Yeah,
reason to be
yeah.
like sneaking out of school or like sneaking around the school building.
I'm sure that's a story they still like the students still like talk about and tell like their kids or whoever today. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh yeah, we got caught by the police sneaking out of school with our teacher.
Yeah. And yeah, I just love how the stories show like the lengths that their teacher will go to for them, and also the ways that they like have such a strong connection with her. Um, was there any individual stories shared that really spoke to you?
Yes. There's one. It's referenced throughout just from different stages in the student's life. But I'm like pretty sure it's the same student who talks about it each time. But it's the student from, I'm pretty sure I've gathered they're from like a middle class white family, but they're talking about the sorority hazing rituals or whatever, and just how terrible they were. And it's in the same book as these students talking about things that their gangs do and having seen their friends pass away. And it's like this one student talking about, yeah, like we're having the freshmen, you know, do these awful things and are exposing them to naked people essentially. And it's like that alone is horrifying. But then you look at that in comparison to these students who are doing are a part of gangs essentially, and you realize that like, oh, it's really not very different. It's like people aren't passing away, but it's still a very similar experience for these children, essentially. And that's something that really stood out to me because we don't really, as a society, look at sororities that way or fraternities. But it's something that society has sort of coined as a more appropriate, quote unquote, version of something like that. But these people are still experiencing a lot of similar traumas. Um, so that's something that really stood out to me as a particular story because it's come back to on several occasions, um, from both like the freshman perspective and then like a junior senior perspective. So that's something that really stood out to me.
There's one for me that it's pretty early on, but it's about this person that like coming out of summer break, like they're now basically homeless. Of like they have a place to live, but they're like they basically got evicted like right before school started, and that was something that like again for being I think it's like freshman year, like or
Yeah.
maybe it's beginning or maybe it's like that's sophomore year or something, but like relatively early on in the book, and it's just like such like a heartbreaking thing of non-school stuff that gets so much in the way of these kids getting a good education. Like there's obviously the school stuff that also gets in the way, and then there's the like obviously there's a lot like talk about gang violence and things like that in this book as well. But then like that one just felt so much like so personal, of just like they have a parent who is trying their best and just isn't able to do this, and then they get evicted and have to figure stuff out, and it's just that's such like a heartbreaking like thing to read about. And then like without going into specifics, there's also a lot of not, I say a lot. There's also several diary entries in this that deal with like abuse and stuff like that, and those ones are obviously also like hurt your heart so much just to like read about, again kind of going to what Emma was just saying about like reading about children like having to deal with this, and again all of this like non-school stuff that is getting in the way of them having a good education is so like heartbreaking. And it's so easy to see like why for so many of them it's like, well, why does school matter? It doesn't help me with the things I'm actually dealing with. And like it's so like again it's heartbreaking to hear these like true stories of kids having to deal with this.
Um, I think one individual story that really stuck out to me was towards the beginning as well. Um, when they were, I think, at the hotel having a dinner, kind of sponsored by this millionaire.
Random millionaire. Like
Just like Miss Gruwell can convince anyone to do
yeah.
anything for these kids.
Yep.
Um,
she's on a mission to give
Yeah.
these kids the experiences they would otherwise not have.
Yeah.
yeah.
She did not dump her charisma stat. Like
No.
um, but yeah, they're having this dinner, and this one student is talking about how this millionaire just like comes to sit down at their table and is like talking to them and like asking their opinions on things, like what they think about things, and like really listening to them, and how in like a 7-minute conversation with this millionaire, they got more like fatherly attention than they've ever gotten from their own
Mhm.
father. And that's like, on the one hand, so heartbreaking, like, but also like the difference that just caring about these kids makes to them. It's like,
They pick up on it.
yeah. Right. With it being an English class, they talked about a lot of various books that they read, um, such as The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, Night by Elie Wiesel, Zlata's Diary by Zlata Filipovic, The Wave by Todd Strasser, Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, and The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Have you read any of those? And did you share in the lessons that they were learning through those books?
I have read Anne Frank. I am 95% positive I read Zlata's Diary for an English class, but I don't remember much about it. Um, and Catcher in the Rye I've read. Um, the others I haven't, but I would like to after this at some point, hopefully. Um, and I mean, I know they're very important books and are definitely lessons to be learned every time you read them, just across the board, and good things to remember. The ones I have read, it's been years since I've read them, so in terms of like lessons that were being learned or have been learned, I don't remember. I know the general content of like Anne Frank and Zlata's Diary. Um, and like understand those concepts well enough to be like, hey, these are important things to know about in a crazy wild world. Um, but I don't remember general thoughts that I had in the moment of reading them. So,
For me, The Diary of a Young Girl is the only one I've read of these. Of Like we never did Catcher in the Rye or The Color Purple. Those are books that like I'm familiar with in passing, but like never had a situation where I went and read those. And then I hadn't heard of the other ones, so like that was kind of all new to me hearing them talk about a lot of these. And then for for The Diary of a Young Girl, I also believe we read the abridged version, so like it's not even the full diary, or it might have just been like excerpts from versus like an actual like book. Because I know like our especially because I think it was in middle school that we read it, and our English books had a bunch of like collections of stories. It wasn't like cover to cover of any of the books, but it was like, oh, here's a chapter or a section on Diary of a Young Girl. And so, like, I feel like that was the situation. So, so yeah. So even they are the only one I even read. I haven't even really read, and so um, just got some bits and pieces. And yeah, and then similar to Emma, like I said, this was probably middle school, so I don't really remember a lot of it. I will say, I don't think I had an English teacher that made me engage with this stuff to the degree that Erin did with her kids, and so I could not really tell you a lot about it again, other than the general like tragedy of it.
mhm.
Yeah. Um, for me, I've read The Diary of a Young Girl and Night. Um, we read Night in high school, so it's been a minute since I read that one, and I read The Diary of a Young Girl probably a few years after graduating high school. Um, those are the only two I've read. The other ones, several of them were on my TBR, and I think will be getting bumped up now because, yeah, like Emma, I'm like, oh, I need to read these.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, I don't remember like a lot of specifics from the ones that I have read, but I remember being like very struck by The Diary of a Young Girl, as well. Just the incredible like hope and faith in humanity that Anne has. despite everything. Yeah, and just like still being able to find like beauty in the world. Um, Going through such an impossibly horrific situation. Um, but yeah, I think what I was gonna say we'll get to later, so I'll save it.
Save it for a future question.
um. All right, I didn't even know if I should ask this question this time because it seems, I don't know, like a weird one to be asking about this book. Did you have any dislikes?
So
I mean,
I can go because I did.
Go for it.
And so one of them has the very big asterisk of you could not have done it a different way. But one of the issues that I have is because they, for obvious reasons, are protecting the anonymity, making the kids anonymous. There we go. I can never say the other one. Because they're keeping the kids anonymous. Like, I found it so hard to have connections because it never felt like there was a through line for, like, seeing kids coming back. Of like, and kind of like to Emma's point, there's a handful that you can kind of be like, I think this one is this one. Like, these two diaries are connected. But because they're not labeled like Diary 1 by student A and then Diary 5 by student A, like it doesn't like give you that like something to hold on to there. I felt like a lot of the diaries seemed to flounder, just in my brain. And again, I don't think you can do that any other way. You like these stories are so intensely personal that like I don't think people would have ever been okay with having some of them published if it was like having their name attached to this is my diary entry. And even when we get to junior year, when they're assembling, like beginning to assemble the diary, there's a lot of stuff in there of them not even knowing whose diaries are whose. So like that they're being protected like all the way back when this is even an idea that's being conceived of. And so like I said, I don't think you could have changed that, but that was definitely something that I didn't like, just for how my brain worked. I would have much rather had even if, like I said, even with still keeping it anonymous, I still would have loved some sort of connection of like these diaries are from the same person. And then this is another one that's kind of hard to say, but like not all of these diary entries are the same. Like there's definitely a lot of them here that I feel like could have been cut. That being said, I'm not the one that would ever have told a student, no, your diary entry is not good enough to get into the book. But like there were definitely some chapters that just kind of felt like, oh, here is another entry that is saying the exact same thing as the 3 entries before it. And that was something that made it harder for me to get through it. And as like a spoiler, I don't know if we're going to get to this specifically, I did not finish this book. This is the first book club book that I haven't read or haven't completed. Partially because I'm doing the ebook, which I hate. Like I wasn't able to get a physical book in time, so that's part of the reason. And I just hate reading on my phone. And so like that was something that like that's on me. But like, and I want to go finish it. Like I do want to go get the physical book and like finish reading it. But like, because I didn't feel connected to the ongoing story of this, like of a specific student, And because some of the diary entries just kind of felt like they retreaded things, it was just hard for me to find the motivation to keep going as I was reading through it. Because it felt like for every like 2 or 3 really good, or like really, when I say really good, ones that like really moved me, there were like 3 or 4 that I was like, okay, this one's just kind of fine. And so, like I said, I think that's mostly a me thing, but like, here we are. You came to our podcast. Here's an opinion. And so,
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat as Cameron. If we're not counting the like anniversary entries that are written like 10 years and 20 years later, I had like maybe 100 pages left. Less than that. It's like 60. So like I'm still gonna finish it, but I did glance through the stuff I didn't finish. Um, but I definitely agree in the sense of like the having some kind of through point connector of like even just like student A, student B. It's also like this is one of those books that you have to go in sort of acknowledging that there's not really a good way to do this kind of book that's like the best way. Everyone's just kind of like doing the best they can because it's a unique concept for a book or a unique thing in general just to be doing for a book is putting together these journal entries for this high school English class of kids who were the quote unquote despicables of that high school, where it's like really they aren't, they just need this kind of attention that most of the school doesn't have the resources or willingness to give them. So it's like it is a book. I guess this is kind of a dislike, but just as like a general thing, like you do have to go in knowing that it's might not be an easy read, might not be a smooth read, but it is a valuable read just because there are moments of like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of it that way because of the life that I grew up in or whatever, XYZ. Because it is important. So,
Yeah, I feel like for me personally, just with the subject matter and the authors being who they are, I was very reluctant to try and be like critical about the the writing of it, and that like they're literally children writing their stories and assembling it all together, and it's so raw and vulnerable that I don't know. I can't criticize that at all. I think I was thinking about this question earlier, and like the only dislike that I have about this book is just the systems in society that made these stories a reality.
yep.
Oh yeah, that's like a whole other level of
Yeah.
dislikes of like
Yeah,
gestures
yeah.
broadly.
No, we're all
at,
like I fully agree with you
Yeah.
on that. That's like
Yeah.
that is a terrible thing that exists and we need to get rid of it.
Yeah, like it's
We
pretty
need to
upsetting how much work Erin has to do to get a good education for these kids.
yeah.
Like, and like how much like outside of school stuff she has to get done so that these kids can get a good education. Like that's pretty upsetting. Like she does an amazing job and is an amazing educator for that, but like that's really bad. like that it
She's
has to go that
the
far. Like,
Yeah, she's the kind of person who should be given like a Nobel Peace
yeah,
Prize or something because of just the sheer amount of willpower and energy she put into giving those kids an education to match that of the best high schools in the country, essentially, that just meets their needs and meets them where they're at, which is not a place that the average American public high school is willing to go. So,
All right. And speaking of education, I have a couple of quotes um, from one of the diaries. They said, I've never read something in school that related to something that happened in my life. And from another diary, I was in class looking over our reading list for the year, along with our essay assignments, when I noticed a saddening lack of diversity. I asked her why, and her response was, "We don't read black literature in this class because it all has sex, fornication, drugs, and cussing." Whoa there, slow down, lady. A simple "it's inappropriate" would have sufficed. Um, and that was in a class different from Miss Gruwell's,
yeah.
obviously. Just um, so yes, I would like to discuss the impact that representation in literature had on these students and the importance of diversity and representation in education.
So this second one is one of the ones that like I highlighted in mine as I was
mhm.
going through it. Um, and I feel like to get to places that we are at presently in at least American politics, when you say things are not welcome because of the basis of what they are, like you are wrong and that is inappropriate. Like you are the one that's a problem there. Of like, and like seeing this as something of being told, oh, like no, we're gonna not read about like the life experiences of this whole culture because it has these things in it is just so upsetting. And like it's so upsetting that like again, I don't know what things are like in Canada, but like at least here in America, it's still like the exact same problems. And like it's the exact same issue. And it's so frustrating that like we are still fighting this exact same fight to have like a wide breadth of stories and inclusions included. Like it's
Mhm.
so again getting back to the previous question of like dislikes of like that was like for all the things going on in this book and like all the great things that happen, it's like we're still dealing with so many of these same things, and it's that's super upsetting.
Yeah, fully on the same page. And this also like and it goes back to what had mentioned earlier of like kids are very aware and they pick up on things and they notice more than we give them credit for. So even just that is a small like, oh, like we're not reading from those voices because of the teacher's own potentially even unaware like racism or whatever. Um, the kids pick up on that and then it negatively impacts them from just, you know, how the teacher handles that situation. And it either that student is gonna like internalize it and become that similar kind of person, or they're gonna go the opposite direction of thinking they're the problem, or to that extent. Um, and that can be super harmful because we like to pretend as adults that kids don't notice things like that when we implement them, but they do. And more often than not, because they're still learning the world, they think they're the root of the problem for it. And it's something that we need to be better at.
Mm-hmm.
I think the stories in this book really illustrate how important representation is. So you have all these kids who, like, maybe never finished reading a single book before in their life, don't see what the point of reading any of these stupid books is, until suddenly they see their stories represented in these books that they're reading, and they're finishing stacks on stacks of books every
Mm-hmm.
year because suddenly there's a point to this. Um, yeah,
Romeo
it's
and Juliet is silly until you realize it's the Asians versus the Latinos. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly it means everything. Because it's not different, it's the same thing. Just different in the sense of it was written hundreds of years ago.
yes. Um, yeah, so like applicable situations like in Romeo and Juliet, but also writers of color and stories that are literally about their culture and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Um, it's so important for them to see themselves and for people to see differences. Um, just like the understanding of tolerance and acceptance that they were able to come to through reading diversely. Um, and yes, you mentioned not knowing what things are like in Canada. Um, in my province right now, um, our provincial government has decided, despite um, most of the province being against it, that they are enacting some government restrictions on school libraries and content. And in
I hate
typical
that.
book banning fashion,
Mm-hmm.
it's objectionable content that is a little bit more targeted toward certain groups of people. Um, so yes, this has been
Mm.
a topic very much on my mind
Mm-hmm.
lately, and yeah, diversity and representation in education is so wildly important. Cannot be overstated.
Mm-hmm.
Ready? I have another quote. Um, the Freedom Riders fought intolerance by riding a bus and pushing racial limits in the Deep South. Then somebody suggested that we name ourselves the Freedom Riders in honor of the Freedom Riders. Why not? It's perfect. But those are huge shoes to fill, so if we're going to take their name, we better take their courage and conviction. It's one thing to ride a bus, but they eventually had to get off and face the music. So it's one thing for us to write diaries like Anne and Zlata, but if we want to be like the Freedom Riders, we need to take that extra step. Just like Anne's story made it out of the attic and Zlata's out of the basement, I hope our stories make it out of room 203. Now, when I write, I'll remember Jim's work and what he risked his life for. Like him, I am willing to step forward, unafraid of who or what lies ahead. After all, history tells me that I am not alone.
I think
Um,
they accomplished what they set out to do. Quite successfully so.
um, yes, I think they very much um, illustrated with their lives how reading and learning and understanding can move outside of the classroom to make a difference. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that kind of building off of something that I said earlier, like one of the like big I think tragedies for a lot of people is that there's so much stuff that gets in the way of them being able to get a good education. Whether that's teachers that aren't like great at communicating, whether that's curriculums that are bad, whether that's like diversity and inclusion being banned, like there's so much that gets in the way. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about this book is that while there are a good number of diary entries that deal with, hey, we're in class and this teacher is making me do this thing, there's also a large number of them that deal with like there's a much larger number of them that deal with the life side of it. And it's something that like the importance of education is not to teach us how to be in a classroom, it's to teach us how to live a life. And I feel like that's something that was really cool to see throughout these of like the like reading stories should motivate us to activism, should motivate us to help people, should motivate us to understand and see the world in a much bigger way. And it was very cool to get to see these not just be this like intellectual debates, but also to be something where we're going to go and do this fundraiser. We're going to go out and like even the idea of the book as a whole of put these stories into a collection so that other people can see what it's like to live our lives and hopefully learn and be able to grow through that. I think it's such an exciting thing to like see break through the barrier of the classroom.
Yeah, and totally. One of the themes I noticed throughout that kind of feeds into this on top of that is a lot of these kids sort of figuring out that what the world tells has told them that they can be is not what they actually can be. And so like a lot of them through the course of this class and their years at high school are like suddenly starting to dream about going to college or um, just doing something bigger than even just like surviving, like even just finishing high school. And through this act of like putting this book together and taking these messages from Anne and Zlata of their courage and the freedom riders of their courage and doing what was right, that was then like a powerful takeaway for them as students that came through of just I am not the world what the world tells me that I am. I am what I say I am, and that's someone who's going to finish high school against the odds and maybe take a couple classes at a community college. And that itself is super courageous of just like taking a stand against the stereotypes or the whatever position society has put them in of having to pay for rent for you and your siblings at the age of 17,
Mm-hmm.
um, of like even just like pushing back a bit against that itself is super courageous and be like, no, like I can go and take classes at a community college and finish high school and do these things that you're telling me I am incapable of doing. And that's like the most courageous thing that someone can do is refuse to accept the fate that the world has handed them and try to do
Mm-hmm.
better for themselves and their families.
Yes, I love what you both said, and I don't think I have anything to add to that one in particular. Um, uh, but like you were saying, Cameron, about how our reading should inspire us to activism, another quote that really stuck out to me was, in any and every situation, non action is never a sane and rational approach. Um, so, in our current political climate, how did the stories and insights in this book affect you? And what are your thoughts on action in difficult situations?
Wish I could say that America as a country were any better than it was 25, 30 years ago. Just off the top of my head, quick math. But it's not, which sucks and is just like not a great state of existence to be in. But at the same time, like as someone who exists here in Los Angeles, of all places, during what wild times it is that we're living in, I'm also like super proud of like the people here in LA and like the way that they've stood up to a lot of the chaos um, that's been going on, um, and just like really insisting on supporting the communities that they're in and the people who are most in danger of governments being governments and politicians being politicians and like refusing to let their neighbors disappear off the streets. Um, so it was like, it sucks that the world is in a place that doesn't look a lot different, but at least people are still trying to do better by the people around them, on a more surface street level. Um, and it's just great to see the insights of these kids in, the 90s and early 2000s, just be something that is like, a lot of things were different then that are different now, um, but their experiences are still very similar, to what kids are experiencing today. And knowing that that's the case, being able to go out and interact with, especially those younger generations, is going to be super interesting. And I hope I'm more mindful about doing that.
Yeah. Um, Whenever I see quotes like this, one of the things that I always have to like remind myself is that action doesn't have to be grand. That I love the sentiment from the Mother Teresa quote of "small acts with great love," and this idea that like, hey, even if you're not out here like being a millionaire and donating a whole bunch of laptops to schools, like you can sit down and have a conversation with a kid and listen and be curious and be inquisitive, and that is something that can like make a huge impact on someone's life because they now understand and now have seen someone treat them like the valuable person that they are. um, like a sillier way to get to this quote is the Doctor Who one of like, I've never met someone that that is unimportant, or what, however that quote goes. um, and I think that that's something that like is so valuable, because I think a lot of times we can get caught up in the idea of like grand change and forget that we can also be working to change our local community. um, and even then, community in the sense of like the people that you hang out with. Like it doesn't have to be
Yep.
community as in your city or town. Like it can just be the, using myself as an example, it could be like the community of the shop that you play Lorcana at.
Yep.
Like it doesn't have
You
to be
could
something
make a
super grand.
meal for the people, like bring a meal with you to share with people, and like that could mean a lot for someone who shows up,
Yeah,
or something like that.
yeah.
recently, um, I've been a lot more inspired to be like politically aware and involved. And yeah, I feel like I don't really have any great groundbreaking answers on what the right action to take is in any given situation. Um, but I think like just awareness is a really good place to start, like knowing what's going on and who it's affecting. Um, and yes, like you said, Cameron, like small actions can be just as impactful. Um, and also knowing your own limits. I think there's so much going on, and social media can sometimes make it seem like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know everything and speak about everything and save the whole entire world, you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Um, but that is not true. And it's okay to not do everything,
Mm-hmm.
but it is important to do something.
Always.
All right. Have a lot of quotes. Have another quote. Uh, the Freedom Riders
You
see this.
shocked.
I know. The Freedom Riders see this book as the third leg of a relay race. Anne's story inspired Zlata, who has been hailed as the modern day Anne Frank. Zlata then reciprocated by passing the baton to the Freedom Riders. We hope this book will inspire you to be the fourth leg of the race by encouraging you to pick up a pen and be a catalyst for change. How are you responding to the Freedom Riders invitation?
Something that
Taking
I've
on.
been. Oh, go ahead, Emma.
Go ahead.
I went first last time. You can go this time.
Okay. I feel like I'm always pretty mindful about the kinds of like film projects I want to work on. Um, just in terms of like things that will matter to people and actually like gives voices to like populations that are not often given the microphone, so to say. Um, so like I hope that I can keep doing things like that when I have the chance and like actually acknowledge the people who are not in power but have important things to say with the skills that I have um, as someone in film. Because I'm not a big writer, but I do create things. Um, and I don't know, I think it's important to acknowledge the true path chargers. That's not the that sounds weird, but like give the attention and the spotlight to the people who haven't been given that before.
Mm-hmm. Um, well, I won't say like this book necessarily motivated me to do something new. It has really like reinforced for me the idea that like you never know what people are going through and you never know the value of a like, hey, hope you're having a good day. Like like those little things or the like the millennial communication of memes on Instagram of just like sending memes to people. Like as we have like our group chat, and like I'm in a handful of other ones, and it's just like
Even
the
when I don't respond.
yes, and like just like the value of like making sure that people know that you care about them. Of like I think that that's such an important thing, and this kind of ties in, Shanine, to what you're saying a little bit ago. Of like there can be so much internet that it can definitely be overwhelming. And I think it's important to do what you can to make sure your part of the internet is a good place. And that doesn't mean that like you have to run from everything. That's not a good place, but it does mean that the way like the places that you're choosing to be can be a place where you try to like be kind and be encouraging to people. Um, and remember that people are human and are going through things unrelated to like what's going on, um, like unrelated to the specific situation. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, I think as someone who would consider herself a writer, um, it was very inspiring for me to read. And I think another topic that has been very much on my mind lately is just the importance of art in
Mm-hmm.
difficult times, um, both as like comfort and escape, but also just shedding light and truth on situations. Um, so yeah, I'm just considering um, what to do with my craft, um, but also in another vein of the pen being mightier than the sword, I will be writing some strongly worded letters to some people in my government um, about the importance of books and not banning them.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
All right. Was there anything else that stood out to you? Any quotes you would like to share? Anything like that?
Um, I had another one. This is from relatively early in, and this is kind of. I don't think this is Erin, but it very much ties in with a lot of the themes that she talks about throughout the book and like her diary entries. Um, and it says it's so easy to lump people into a group and label them, but that's how the Holocaust started. And just I loved the 0 to 60 of that quote of like, oh yeah, sometimes we're judgy, and then the Holocaust, but like I think that quote really hit me, because like there's the example of like they came for these people and I didn't do anything because that wasn't me. And then when they came for me, no one came for me because there was no one left. And that idea, like that's kind of why that quote hit me. Just that idea of like, hey, like me lumping in this team that I don't like at work isn't going to lead to the Holocaust, but like it is a symptom, like, and it is something that like is a problem and that I need to check about myself. Like, and that quote hit me really hard for like that reason.
That was one I picked, so I'm gonna give another one um, that I also liked. And it's basically, I am the traveler that came upon those two roads. I had a choice. I could take the road that is more traveled by the members of my family and get a job, or I could take the road less traveled and be the first to go to college. I decided to take the road less traveled because I know it would be better in the long run. I know that my decision to go to college will affect my sister's decisions, and they will not be as afraid as I was of traveling this road. And I think that was a super great insight from a teenager of like they have a duty to themselves to make a better life for their future. But that also means that by making that choice for themselves, even though it's terrifying and they don't have anyone to look up to in making that choice, they will then be the example that their younger siblings have to look up to um, when they hit that point of making those decisions of like I'm not just making this choice for myself and my own future, but also for the future of my sisters, who will then see it as a more of a possibility, and especially going for this group of students who are like not less privileged, but just in that a much tighter, tougher situation. Like they're thinking always about their family and their communities as much as they are thinking about their own future. I thought it was super cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was so great seeing like their journey through high school and how like they didn't they started without hope to even graduate maybe to like I need to go to college so that the kids after me can go to college too. Um yeah. All right. And now for the question we have all been waiting for. Get ready for some book ban rants.
Yeah.
Um
Buckle up,
we're
everyone.
So this is a quote from one of the 10-year anniversary diary entries um, from Miss Gruwell, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, so she said, as our book has made its way into classrooms, libraries, and the hands of voracious readers around the world, our message has been both celebrated and persecuted. While the book won accolades from many, reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and was even featured on Oprah, we have also faced our share of cynics. The gritty language troubled some, while the content concerned others. Some went so far as trying to fire teachers who used the book in the classroom, and someone even sent it to the FBI as pornography. But if I have learned anything from controversy, it is that the best way to get teens to read a book is to ban it.
And that is the most true statement I have ever heard.
All right, so some fun facts. Uh, the book was originally published in 1999 and has apparently been subject to bans this whole time. According to the PEN America Index of School Book Bans, in the 2023-2024 school year, it was banned in 20 American school districts. Um, some were just restricted, some were banned pending investigation. 11 were fully banned. Um, could not find any evidence of this being banned in Canada, which I did like. Um,
Good for you, Canada.
a
Actually proud of you on this one.
um, and from what I could find, it was being banned for including racial slurs, sexual content, and being pornographic. Thoughts?
I mean, it's such a silly, stupid way to ban something like this, in my opinion. because that is like those kinds of things are literally what these teenagers experienced on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So it very much comes off as hypocritical of like we're we're banning this book to protect our kids from this content, but the content is literally true stories of kids experiencing that content.
Yeah.
If you want to protect kids from that content, go into those communities and implement like services and organizations to help get kids out of those situations. Don't ban books talking about it. Like, that's not the way to deal with this issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I very much agree. Like, it's one of the things that I think is so like slippery slope fallacy with this is it's like as I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, well, if I was a parent, what age would I be okay with my kid reading this? And like, I'm not a parent, so this is all hypothetical. But it's like, well, if my kid was in elementary school, I don't think I would want them reading this book.
Definitely not.
But like, I feel like that's like the logic that then gets to like, well, how could they show this to our kids? Like, well, it's probably not even in your school. Like, this is something that like, and I feel like it also illustrates like such a big like lack of nuance in the conversation of like this should be something that's in at least high schools, like arguably middle schools as well. But like I feel like it's so easy for people to make the argument of like, but think of the children when it's like, no, this like again, this is to Emma's point, like no, this is what the children are dealing with.
Yeah.
Like this is something that is like literally people dealing with the things that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. Um, and I think that that's something that is super important for people to like have and be aware of and not just be like, oh, it says some bad things, my kid shouldn't read it. It's like they really should though. Like you should be able to have those nuanced conversations with your kid about like, hey, when they use these words, here's why we don't say those. Like, or
Mm-hmm.
like here's this content, like this is why this is bad. Like, or this is like why like these people are like assaulted, and it's like, hey, here's why this is bad, here's why you should never do this. Like you should be able to have those conversations. But I feel like so often it becomes the like, oh no, that's too awkward, and so I don't want my kid to have to deal with it, even though they're gonna find out about it plenty of other ways.
Um, yeah, no, you pretty much nailed it. I think it is absolutely so wild to find this content objectionable and like, oh no, my children cannot read this, but it is absolutely okay for other children to literally experience it in their lives. Um, I just feel like we could be putting our energies somewhere else here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like the the things that they are objecting to are honestly such a small portion of the book as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like if you lined up all of the sentences that include that kind of content, it would probably be less than half a page of the whole book.
Mm-hmm.
That is over 400 pages. Um, and part of me just feels that that maybe is like not the full reason that we are objecting to this content. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe some white people are just once again trying to silence the voices of black and Latino and Asian people.
So that I think they might protest too much. Like,
Yeah.
And like, yes, obviously these things are like super troubling to read. That doesn't mean it should be banned. Um, that means it is important to learn about and discuss, particularly in a safe and educational context.
yes.
So,
It's like those are the exact reasons that this should be like that you should have teachers that are well trained, like well compensated, and like are able to go and take these stories and like talk about them with students. Like that like these being difficult is the exact reason that
We
you
should be
need
having
people that can
conversations
handle
about
it
them.
well. Yeah.
um, so yes, to sum up, do you think this book deserves to be banned?
No.
No.
Not in the slightest.
I think that if this was a fiction book, there are certain things that I would be like, oh, okay. But like the fact that this is nonfiction and it's like these people that like, again, not even if it was fiction, not that I would agree with it being banned, but like I could see the argument more. But like the fact that it is nonfiction and it's like literally these kids' experience, like it's so upsetting.
I do have more to say on this. Also, the fact that book banners always like narrow focus on like this one thing that is not the main subject matter of the book and completely ignores the overarching positive message of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I would find this to be a very positive and inspiring and informative read.
Mm-hmm.
And to be banning it for objectionable content.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Any other final thoughts on the Freedom Writer's Diary?
So I'll say I know I came out pretty like aggressive with my dislikes, but like I do think that this is a really good book, and like I said, I do want to go actually finish this,
Yeah.
and I think that it is like such an important story or selection of stories, and it's something that like I feel like my criticism is like it comes from the place of like what works for me and my brain, not what is the content of the book. And so that was something that I was just thinking about as we were going through more of the conversation. And so I'm definitely looking forward to going and picking up a physical copy, and going and reading through the rest of it, and getting to see more of like the latter parts, because I made it to spring of junior year, and so um, I'm definitely looking forward to going and reading more. Like I said, in a way that works much better for my brain.
Yeah. I'll definitely be finishing this at some point this week or next. So,
Uh, yes, I think this is a very impactful book, um, and story. Um, there is the movie with Hilary Swank and also a documentary. So I think I'm going to see if I can find the documentary to watch anywhere because that would also be very interesting. Yeah, I think it's very impactful and very inspiring and an important read. Um, read banned books.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, continuing with our banned book summer, for August, we will be reading Looking for Alaska by John Green.
Yeah.
Um, our first time going Nerdfighteria on First Geek Book Club. And an author who has several books on the banned book list. So
Proudly. He's very proud of that fact. In the best way possible.
And another announcement.
Another announcement. Emma and I have been teasing this as part of our regular announcements of please be excited for the future. The future is next week. And so this coming Monday, I believe August 4th,
That
yeah,
sounds right.
we will be bringing in a handful of friends and we will be starting a short Daggerheart campaign here on the channel. It will be roughly twice a month. And then we are going to be playing, and it's going to be a part of like our normal programming until we finish that. And so, as long as people are able to come and play, we have some cool plans. Next week is going to be our session 0, so we're going to create characters, talk about the world and like the format that we're going to do, and then our actual like formal first session will be 2 Mondays after that, on the 11th, and so, or on the 18th, I mean. So for August, you'll have 2 sessions of Daggerheart book club, and then we'll have 1 like normal newsy episode. And so, hope everyone can come and be a part of it. We'll have some announcements over in the Discord as we get closer to this coming Monday.
It'll be great.
Thank you for joining us on Banned Book Summer on First Geek 411's Book Club. Remember, you can find us as One Geek 411 on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
You can join our Discord server or shoot us an email at onestgeek411@gmail.com. Check out our Redbubble store and watch live on our Twitch and find all our videos on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram as Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES.
You can find me pretty much most places at I am not prepared with an I in the prepared. I got rid of my Twitter recently, so I'm not going to be there anymore.
And then you can find me around the internet as Humar Whittle, such as Discord, Blue Sky, Threads, all that. And so.
All right. Read banned books.
Drink tea while you do it.
Write banned books.